Hello, Internet people. All right, this is the final class of creating our Instagram clone. Obviously, we are not doing every single screen, or this would be probably 20 more classes to get it, even close. But I feel like through these last 7 classes, we've essentially got a lot of the main pieces. I'm going to share the screen. There we go. As you can kind of see here, we have, I'm going to see a very quick review of what we've built. We have our main page, our home feed or whatever it's called, complete with our story lists and a bunch of posts that are obviously repetitive because we just copy and paste, but made it really nice. We've also made a profile page right here, and we did a little tiny bit of JavaScript to allow us to toggle between these 2 different views. So that's really nice. And lastly, and we don't have a link for this yet, so I have to actually change the URL. We have a story.html, which I'm just going to increase the speed of that because I was testing something after the call, but let's refresh that. So just want to make that progress a little more smooth. Picking that magic number of maybe 20. Yeah, it feels right. So we have our nice little UI here for a story. We'll just do a quick review of how that worked. So we essentially had a story. Let me zoom this for you. We have a div that's our story, and that's the whole entire screen. If we were to look at the styles of that here, we'll look for story. It's going to be way down. Story. Where did our story start? Here we go, story. So yeah, we made this fit the whole screen by doing 100 VH and 100% width. And yeah, we put in the content, which was this lovely image, which we also positioned absolutely and made it 100%, and put it at a Z index of 1 so that we could set other Z indexes to make sure things are on top, which they are. We have our story top, which is this whole thing here, including the progress bar, and then our story bottom, which is fixed to the bottom of the screen with these few icons here. So yeah, not too much HTML and really a decent amount of CSS, but not too bad. Okay, so what we're going to do today is a little bit of fun. It'll be a little bit of experimentation because there's probably a few different ways to do this, but we're going to, you're going to bear with me as we try some different approaches because I want to make it so we can animate to different ones with that nice 3D rotation effect that everyone loves. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is, just because it's annoying to type this in, we're going to go back to our index.html, and we're going to make one of these at least clickable to go to your story. So I'm going to open up our index, and we're just going to pick the second story item, the first one with the thing around it. And we're going to change, let's see if this will work. If I change this to an A tag instead of a div, still seems to work properly. So what we can do, because it's an A tag now, is actually just make it an href to story.html, refresh. And if we click this now, it brings us right to the story. Amazing. Okay. I'm also, just for the annoyance for now, I'm going to set is complete on this animation to true, just so it doesn't, every time we reload, animate this thing. We'll throw that back in later. Okay. So how we're going to handle this is going to be interesting. Essentially, what we need to actually do is wrap our entire story in a new container called, I'm just going to call it stories, because ultimately we would have multiple in here. And I'm just going to indent everything to match. And inside our stories, we have our story. And I am going to keep this as is, and we're actually going to duplicate it. Oops, this part from this part, the whole story. So we have 2. And let's just see what happens when we do that. So nothing has changed. What I am going to do is actually change a couple things about the second one. For instance, make this say username 1, maybe make it say 12 hours. And we'll see that, oh, this is what's happening. So our stories are now stacked on top of, on top of each other. That's not exactly what we want. So let's figure out what we can do there. Maybe we're gonna actually start simpler than what I really want to do, because I think trying to do this all at once is going to be tricky. So in my stories class, and we're going to scroll down to where stories start, and I'm going to go .stories. And inside here, what do I want to do? How do I want to do this? Stories. So right now it's like that. I'm going to make the width of this right now 200 VH. Sorry, VW. 200%. Let's just do. And basically what that allowing is now we have enough room to have another story over here. Stories, yeah. And I'm also going to make it 100. Oh, right, that's not going to work. I mean, that will work. We have to change this to VW as well. Because what I want is, yeah, exactly. So now we have we can technically have two stories beside each other. We have enough room for it. So I made the width of stories 200%, and I set this width instead of 100% to 100 VW, so viewport widths, 100% of the viewport. But when it was at 100%, it was stretching to the whole thing. And then what we can do here, let's just try this first, see if it'll work. If I do a float left, we should get them beside each other now. Great, we do. Okay, now I don't know why the second image is not showing up. Probably I'm just going to make the position of this relative. There we go. We have to make sure anytime we're absolutely positioning things that its parent is relative or absolute, so that it knows what to base it off of. Okay, so we got two guys. So we're going to start, very simply, and just to kind of show how we can do these, we're going to be using a CSS transition to do this, and I want to explain it in its simplest form before going so crazy. Okay. So what I want to do is essentially find a way that we can go and animate to the next one. So what I'm going to just show first is left. I'm just going to set the left of, I'm going to make stories position relative for now, and left of 0. Left of 0 shouldn't do anything. But for instance, if this was left of like 50 pixels, let's just see what happens. Oh, sorry, minus 50 pixels is what I actually mean. We see that there's, okay, a bit of a transition happening. So obviously if we were able to, animate this over, a whole bunch of time, we would eventually get to the second story. But we're not gonna be able to, just do that manually. So I'm gonna start it at 0 pixels. And what we're gonna do is on our stories object, I'm going to give it an ID, so that container. We're gonna give an ID of number of stories. And we're just gonna walk through the process here. So I'm gonna create a new thing called stories element, and it is stories. I just want to show you how we could set that value dynamically. So I'm just going to, underneath all of this, make a new, basically take stories element and go dot styles or dot style dot left equal to, let's just do minus 50. And because it is CSS that we're working with, we have to write it like this in these quotes to put the PX. Okay, stories element. Wait, is this inside here? No. Or maybe. Okay, let's just make sure that this is typed out right. Oh yeah, I put a number sign in here. You do not put the number sign in there. That is what is going on. So I'll put this back to -50px. And there we go. So we are able with JavaScript essentially to dynamically change this, which is a nice step. There we go. Okay. So what I'm also going to do is we're going to make a variable and we're going to call it screen width. And that's going to be equal to window dot client, window dot, I think it's just window dot width, inner width. And I'm just going to console log what that is, because we're going to need to know this variable to work with things. So let me just open up my console, refresh, we got screen width 750. So that's kind of like a magic number, and that will vary, if someone is using, a different size screen and we were to refresh 828, for instance. 750. Okay, so we definitely need to know that variable. What we also want to know is essentially how many stories there are. So story count. And what I can use is, actually, sorry, we're going to do this a little differently. We're going to make something called all story elements. And that's going to be document dot. Now this is a different thing, a new thing. Select query selector all. And this we can actually pass in a CSS selector. So I can go dot story. And if we were to console log all story elements, I can't type today, so I'll just copy and paste. We would see in here, there's actually a list of multiple stories, and 2 in this case. All right, so we have that. And then we can make another variable called story count. And all that is going to be equal to all story elements dot length. And again, if we console log that, count, story count, we get 2. So we're going to want to know that too, to know if we need to go to the next one. Okay, let me just get rid of this line. I'll comment that line out so it looks better. Okay, so now we essentially want to trigger an event to happen. Now we already have sort of the work done for this in some sense. I have currently set is completed true, but let's make this say false. So the only difference now is this thing's going to animate across the top. And what we're essentially going to do is whenever it finishes, we want to go to the next story. So I'm going to just write this right now, load next, or let's say show next story. And we're going to make a function called that. Function show next story. Okay, we also want to make a variable called current story index. And I'm going to set this to 0. So indexes are kind of like when you are, we want to essentially keep track of what story we're on. And in programming, you usually actually start with 0 instead of 1 for a few reasons. Okay, so essentially when we get to show next story, what we're going to do is we're going to go current story index plus equals 1. So we want to obviously increment that number to be like, hey, we're gonna go there. We also, before we actually do anything, we want to make sure that we have enough stories. So we're gonna have an if statement here and make sure if current story index is greater than story count, we're actually just going to return out of this function and not do anything further. Okay, and what I'll do is we're going to just right now alert current story index just to see what happens. So we're at 1 now, and oh, right, we need to whenever we load the next story, we also have to reset some things. So we want to set progress element value back to 0. And we want to set is complete to false. So I'm going to get rid of this alert just for a minute. Just want to make sure this works. So in theory, when it gets to the end, yeah. So what's happening is when it gets to the end, let's just see how many times that happens. So once, twice, and it is happening a third time. That's because I made a mistake. Then it stops. So we actually want to check if it's greater or equal to story count. We want to stop. So 1, 2, and it stops. The reason it's stopping is because of this. Whenever the current story index is greater than the story count, we're going to return out and not do anything. And just to show what's happening with the story numbers, so currently it's 0, now it becomes 1, then at the end it becomes 2, but it doesn't alert this time because we don't have, we return out before then. Great. Okay, so we have some of the logic here, and just to show how flexible this is, because we're counting things with JavaScript, if I was to again copy this thing and paste it, and for now this will eventually be dynamic, but I have to make this 300% because we now have 3 stories. So now we should get 1, 2, 3, and then it stops. Okay, so that's great. So now we actually have to decide what actually happens when we do this. Well, ultimately what we want to do is we want to take whatever the left position is now, which will be 0 at first, and we want, so I'm going to make a variable called current left, and that's going to be equal to this value here. And let's just console log this current left. I just want to know something about it. Oops, wait, current left minus 125. Okay, got it. Okay, so we're going to make another variable. Actually, we're going to move that variable that I just made, kind of current left, and it's equal to 0 at first. Okay, and what we want to do instead of this, we want to change our current left, and we want to make it equal to whatever current left is minus the screen width. So that's great there. And then, and this is the fun part, we set its left to current left plus we need to add on, these .px, the px thing here. So let me just try this once and see what happens. That almost worked. So it's ending and something weird is happening. I wonder why. What I'm going to do is just make this like 50 for now. I think the screen width might be wrong. There we go. Okay. So something is wrong with the screen width here, and I think I know why. Screen width 1125. That's and wait, window.inner. Outer width. I guess I would, yeah, I guess I need to use outer width, not inner width. I'm not sure why, but we're going to do that. And then setting this back to screen width. Boom. And it does actually change. See that it goes to username 1 and then 2. The problem is, with a couple problems. First of all, we're only subtracting out the screen width. Really what we want to be doing is the screen width times whatever number we're on. So if we're on current story index 0, it would be minusing 0. But once we get to 1, it'll work, and then in theory 2 will work as well. So there's 1. Oh, nope. Screen width times. Oh, sorry, wrong piece. We want to do it from current story index. So it goes once, and then it's going again, and then it's actually going again. current left minus, sorry. Let me just see if this works, and then I'll explain the logic. Cool. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so I realized we were kind of doubling down on that. It should be basically whatever the screen width is times the current story index is. We should just set it to that, not actually subtract it from its current one. Otherwise, it's just gonna keep growing. Okay, something else I've noticed is because we have these sort of things duplicated, there's some z-index issues where we don't really see these things until it's too late. So I want to figure out how we should be able to see this on the first screen. For the time being, I am just going to return out of this thing so that it doesn't actually move, because I want it to work here. So I think we can just fix this with some z-indexes. In fact, I'm just going to delete references to z-index at first. I think there's maybe, oh shoot, I think there's maybe one more. Z-index 2. Okay, why is that? Okay, story bottom, position fixed. Why can't we see that? There's our place kitten. There's story bottom. It is under the screen. Oh, interesting. What is with all this extra padding? It could have something to do with our floating. Let's turn off the float for a sec. Yeah, there's some position relative, position relative. Oops. Okay, maybe instead of floating, we're just going to go display inline. Or no, not on that, but display inline block. Let's just see if that changes some things for us. And box sizing border box, I'm going to do that on here as well. What? Why is it not? Why does the next one not fit in there? Yeah, this one's getting squished down. Let me just make it wider for now, and then we'll figure out. Okay, cool. And then I'm just gonna make the height of this box 100 VH. Where's this scrolling coming from? What is this here? Body, stories. We have a story. We should have 3 stories. I just don't understand why there's this extra padding happening. Did I? Height 100 VH. What? Okay. Yeah, where's this coming from? What is this? Okay, I have an idea. Just to hopefully, will this fix it? Let's just try. Body. I'm gonna go and do this body HTML overflow hidden. I just want to know where this extra stuff is coming from. There we go. Interesting. And let's just do overflow wide for now, just to test. Okay, everything's lined up. Good. And so for some reason, the body or the HTML was adding extra space in the bottom. So I just made the overflow hidden so that you can't scroll, at least overflow Y hidden for now. And then we're going to go back to what we were doing and make the width of this back to 300%. That way they fit. Okay, this is beautiful now. We got all the things as we would expect. Except, and I'm curious how Instagram does this. Does this part rotate with it or not? That's my real question right now. Because right now this is fixed and staying with us. I'm not sure why. Did I copy the wrong thing? So story bottom. Oh, because it's position fixed, right? Story bottom. I'm just gonna make this position absolute. I don't think that'll change anything. Yeah, there we go. So now it actually will rotate with it. That's what it should have been. Fixed worked in the one case, but the fact that we're gonna have sort of these multiple states, we definitely want something like that to happen. Okay, back to what we were doing. Now that we got that figured out, I'm gonna turn this off. And what we should see happen is when the progress finishes, it should instantly go to the next person. Okay, so that's good. Now, one very important issue that I'm noticing is the fact that the progress bar only works on the first one. And that makes sense. It is actually probably still working on the one before, we just can't see it anymore. And the problem that we've created is because we actually have multiple progress bars with an ID. And when you're using IDs in JavaScript, you're really only ever supposed to have one. So there's two ways we could fix this. We could use a class, but I think ultimately the progress bar could be something that's global and not specific to each story. You know, these things need to change on a story by story basis, but the actual progress bar, although if we wanted to animate, yeah, you know what? Okay, we'll just do this the easy way, and I'm going to change anywhere that it's an ID of progress to a, no, we are going to do it the way I'm suggesting. So I'm going to pull this out of here, and inside stories, I'm going to put it right here, and we're going to get rid of progress. We're going to, there's probably one more reference to it. Yeah, okay. That's going to definitely break some things. Excellent. Whoa, really broke some things. Did I get rid of the wrong thing? No. Story. Okay. Width. Let's make this width 100. Oh wait, I wonder if it's because I put this display flex. Cool. No. Really broke stuff. Boom. It's looking great. Okay, I think it's something to do with the fact that the when we got rid of that progress bar, which essentially was making the width a certain thing, we ran into a bit of a problem. So first of all, just to make this easier to fix, let's return out of this again so the animation doesn't happen. Why did it start there? You know what? Okay. I think for our purposes for now, let us undo a bunch of stuff and get our progress bars back. Okay, so we have that. Oh, I missed one. Yeah, we're just going to do this a little bit differently. Instead of an ID of progress, I'm actually just going to get rid of the reference to the IDs because we already have a class on it, story progress. And this isn't necessarily the most efficient way to do it because essentially we're going to be animating all the progress bars, even the ones hidden, but that's fine for now. So what I want to do is get another variable called progress bar elements, and this will be document.get elements query selector all, and it was called I think story progress. Let's see if that's right. when we loaded, we should see cannot read property value of none. That makes sense because this doesn't exist anymore. Let me just get rid of that for a moment. Cannot read property value of no. Where's value happening? Oh, we have it in 2 spots. Maybe even more. Line 174. Yep. Okay. For now, let's just return out of this so it doesn't throw that error. Okay, we got this node list. Okay, we did not do something correct because we need, when we're using this, we need to actually do it like a CSS selector. There we go. So we have all 3 in here. That's nice. And now what I'm going to do, because we're going to be sort of, because we're kind of setting the value of the progress pretty often, we're going to put this in its own little function. So I'm going to make a function called update. Wait, we already have a function called update progress, but okay, yeah, that's fine. We'll just do it in here. So I'm going to make a new variable just so we're keeping things nice. Current progress, and it's going to be equal to 0. And what we're going to do, instead of directly working with the UI element, we're going to do the same thing, but do current progress equals current progress plus 1. And I'm going to replace this here with current progress greater than this. And the other spot we do it is here. And we're going to say current progress equals 0. So now we're not going to have the UI animating yet, but the same functionality should still work, where after a certain amount of time, happens quick, but username 1, and then the next one loading 2. So in order to update the UI, I'm just going to say, I'm going to make a function called update progress UI. And we're going to take our progress bar elements. And what we can do, because there's multiple, we can put this in a, we can go for each. And we can actually pass a function in here and go this dot value equals current progress. Oh, wait. That might not be how for each works. Let's see. For each callback function, value, the element. Oh, you know what? It might have been working. We didn't actually call this though. So in the update progress, essentially after everything is done, we always want to just update the progress UI. There we go. Boom, boom, boom. Cool. So essentially what's happening here is we're calling this update progress every 20th or 20 milliseconds. When that calls, if it is already complete, it'll just return out of this thing. Is complete true? Yeah, exactly. So if it's complete, it doesn't do anything because there's nothing to do. Then what we do, assuming it isn't complete, is we add 1 to the progress of it. So that's 1% because we're dealing with it in 100%. And whenever the current progress is greater or equal to 100, technically we could just go equal 100, but just for, you know, complete safety in case some weird thing happens in your computer and it skips 100, it goes from 99 right to 101. This will just keep it safe to, you know, at any point it's over 100, it'll go and it sets it to complete. And we run this function called show next story. And no matter what, unless we returned out of here, we're going to update the progress UI. So that's what's happening. And then show next story, we are incrementing the story that we're on. We're checking to make sure that it's not, that there is another story essentially. Then we set current progress back to 0. We set is complete to false because it's not completed anymore. And then we do, we set its positioning. So this is the fun part here. And now what I want to do is actually animate instead of it being boring. So there's ways we could do this with JavaScript just by kind of having another sort of timer event like this, an interval that will go through and like move it pixel by pixel. But that's not really efficient, and it's not efficient at all, and it's usually janky. We can enter CSS. Any CSS property can actually be animated. We've done a few. Usually when we're doing like hover effects and stuff, we'll add a bit of a transition. But what I can do, and the thing that we want to animate specifically is this stories container, because that's what's changing. It's this left right here. So I can just very easily go transition, and I choose what property I want to transition, in this case left. I want to choose how long to do it over. And I'm going to say, let's just do 1 second for now. And then you can pass in optionally the way you want it to animate in terms of its timing. So I'm just going to do linear, which is the default, just to show what that looks like. So just by doing that, you see that the whole thing actually just moves over like that. Yay. So that's nice. Obviously I feel like that was too slow. So let's make it 0. I'll keep it at 1 for now. I just want to show the difference. So linear is essentially, there's no acceleration, there's no deacceleration. It's either happening or it's not, and it's a hard edge. Linear, I find, is totally fine to use on like color animations and that kind of stuff. But anytime you're doing movement, you definitely want what's called some ease. So the most basic ease is just, you can write ease here. And what that's going to do is like driving a car, it's going to start slow, get to its speed, and then slow back down. So just to look at the difference of ease, it kind of has this like, so that's definitely more like it. There's also ease in, and I believe that just does easing at the start. Yeah, like that. And there's ease out, but there's also ease in out. And that's probably what we want. So it's kind of doing it the start and end, and I'll make it 2 seconds just to make it even a little more noticeable. Okay, very good. Let's put it back to, let's put it to like 0.5 seconds. That's a little more like it, right? Cool. So the only issue now is this timer is starting immediately. And really it probably shouldn't start until this gets into the frame. So we need a way to handle that. Essentially what we want to do is we're setting current progress here to 0, which is fine. And because this thing is always running, it's going to completely keep, keep running this function. So what we are actually going to do is I'm going to create another variable called, let's call it timing. Let's just call it interval. I'm just going to call it interval. I'm going to set it to null right now in the top here. And what we're going to do is actually make this interval equal to this guy here. All right. So we have that. And what we can do anytime a new story happens, I'm actually going to go to, we're going to do something called window.clear interval. And I can pass in the interval here. I think is that. Let's just see if that worked. In theory, it should only animate once now. Yeah, and it doesn't go. Okay, perfect. What I'm also going to do is when we make this interval, I'm going to make a function called init interval and just place it in here. And there's indent, keep it good. And we want to make sure we run that function. So when this page loads, we're just going to run init interval. So this should work the exact same way. It's just wrapped in a function right now. That way, we can very easily, at the very end of this, we can rerun init interval. So now this should just be exactly like it was before. Now, what we essentially want to do, and I'm going to make this transition maybe like 0.75 seconds. So it's a little bit slower. Awesome. So all we really want to do here is actually go window.set timeout. So not interval, but set timeout. And I'm going to pass a function in. And we don't want this interval to start until that 7.5 second, there's 0.75 seconds has happened. So what we need to do is actually just type 750 in here. JavaScript timing is done in thousandths of a second. So 1,000 is 1 second. So to do 0.75 seconds, it's 750. So now what we should see is the next progress bar won't even start until that page actually loads. Awesome. Okay, that's pretty nice. The next thing that we can do, because in stories, you obviously have the option to skip a story, right? Right now we're accounting for, we're assuming that each of these are a different user. I know in Instagram, you could have multiple stories in a row and kind of like, you see them like that. We're keeping this simpler than that. So we're assuming that each one's a new one, meaning we want to have an ability to skip to the next one. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our HTML here. And in our, let's see, we have the story container. So I'm going to go all the way to the end of the story container, which I believe is right here. And we're going to make something called left. I'm going to call it left button and right button. Okay. And we'll go back to our CSS, and I'm going to do this here because it's kind of to do with stories. I mean, it is stories.left button, and I'm going to go position absolute. I'm going to make its background color for debug purposes red. We're going to give it a width of maybe like 30% and a height of, let's just do like 70 VHs, so 70% of the view height. Oh, right. We actually, want to do 30 V8 or VWs. So that gets it like this, and that looks all right. And you know what? I'm gonna disable. If I just turn off a knit interval, nothing should actually animate. So it's just going to be easier to keep it on this. So I'm just have that commented out right now. I can also get rid of this. We're not using that. Okay, so we have a width of this and height of that. We also want to give it a top. I'm going to give it a top of 15 VH, so 15% of the window. That way it's nice and centered here. And I'm going to copy this and do the same with right button. And I'll make its background blue just so we can see it. The only difference here is we want to give this a right of 0. Technically, and I'll just do it to be verbose, left of 0, right of 0. Stories, right button, right button, yeah. Oh, right. Because it's within the stories, it is. Okay, I have a good solution here. Instead of absolute, this is a perfect time to use fixed positioning. That's fixed to your screen. Okay, perfect. So it still scrolls, everything's good. So these would essentially be our hotspots that if someone clicks, we're automatically going to go to the next story. So I'm for now going to just make them RGBA, just so we can still kind of see them. 0.3, just so we can still see them, and I'll do the same with this one, just so we know what we're clicking. Eventually they'll be invisible. Okay, back to our JavaScript. We need some more elements. So we're going to make an element called left button element equals document dot. And we can do, instead of using document.getElement by ID, we can actually use query selector. In this case, dot right button, dot left button. And we can change this to right button. So let's just, usually when I do this, I like to do a console log of something just to make sure. I don't know why it's not auto completing, but left button. And there we go, we have the element. And I'm assuming right will be fine too. If not, we'll run into that issue and debug it. Okay, so with our left button, right down here, I'm going to add an event. Actually, let's start with the right one. That one's simpler. Right button element dot add event listener. And we want to add the event listener click. And when a click happens, we want to run this function right here. And let's just test it by going click. So I refresh, and if I click here, yeah, we have the word click happening. Over here, nothing. But over here, we have that because we added it only to the right one. So anytime someone clicks right, I mean, essentially all we really should need to do is actually go show next story. I think that will handle everything. And it does. Look at that. And even if I click it here, because we have that check, everything's good. There we go. We are skipping. Perfect. Now left is a little bit trickier because we haven't made a function called show previous story, but let's make that function. And I am, yeah, essentially, I'm just going to copy and paste this whole thing. And there's some slight changes we have to go. So I'm going to call this show previous story. And I'm also, while I'm at it, copying this, and we'll do left button element, show previous story. So in our previous story, a lot of things are the same, except we want to subtract 1 from it. So we're setting current story index minus equals to 1. So I kind of did this without explaining, but this is the equivalent. So I could have wrote, I wrote it that way, but I could do current story index equals current story index minus 1. These two lines mean the exact same thing. This is just like a shorthand way of doing it. When you know that you're going to be essentially comparing it to itself, you can just do minus equals. So I'm just going to do it the way that makes sense. But as you know, as you should know, these are the exact same thing. So we want to subtract. The other thing we want to do is compare. We don't want to compare if it's greater now. We want to make sure, okay, so if the current story index is less than 0, we want to return because we don't want people to be going back, even further. We still want to set, anytime this changes, the current progress to 0. We still set is complete to false. All this should still work because it's being based off this index, and we can still set it. And then, yeah, we still want to set that interval. So I think that'll just work. So if I click it now, nothing's happening. And oh yes, no, that's fine. But if I click, ooh, look at that. I don't know what happened there. I think I know what happened. Okay, so I can go forward, I can go forward, I can go back, I can go back. And if I try to go back again, stuff kind of breaks. I also realized we should make sure this interval is back on. Otherwise, weird stuff happens. So I can go back. Cool. Something else I want to do is anytime we are showing preview or next, I want to just I want to update that UI. So this progress takes current progress. Yeah. So anytime, essentially, and yeah, we're just gonna do anytime that you click this, we want to update the progress UI. And we're just gonna move this actually up to here. So we're gonna set anytime there's a click, we're gonna set progress to 0, just so it's ready to go, and we're gonna update the UI. I'll do that there too. That way we don't get this weird thing where when you kind of go, it's stuck in the middle for a minute. So as soon as you click, it's instantly good to go. All right. Okay. Sweet. Except something weird happens on the first one. It should still reset. So when I hit back, clear interval. Yeah, you know what? I believe this needs to happen before our return function. Let's just see. Because we still want that interval when someone clicks to reset, as it's doing right there. Boom. Perfect. Whoa. Okay, yeah. Okay, and then one other thing we want to do is Okay, yeah, I know a better way to do this. We can keep these in the same order as they were before. So kind of, I mean, oops. The issue we are having is the fact that we're returning out. Rather than returning out though, we can just do what's kind of called a clamp, and we can just set current story index equal to story count -1 in this case. And right here, set it back to 0. So stuff should still perform the same way. It's just basically being like, when it's less, don't go less, and then still perform as you would, which means we should be able to kind of go between things and not have weird stuff happening. Yeah. Oh, look what's happening there. Windows set interval. Okay, something else we want to do in our init interval is, I'm just going to check if there already is an interval set. We actually just want to make sure we clear it. So window dot, oops. Because otherwise they get stacked. That's why it seems to be happening really quickly. So now I should be able to kind of just like jam around and not have it break. Yeah, we're good. Okay, definitely got a bit of JavaScript here. All right. Yeah, I think we're looking pretty good here. So it's auto, yeah, it's auto going, has the ability to go ahead. One other thing I'm noticing, so when I kind of click here, there's that little bit of a pause. So what I'm thinking is, we have this 750 that's going. So I'm actually at the very top of this. We're going to make a variable called delay and set it to 750 and use that variable here. But in the case essentially here where we don't have, where there isn't anything else to do, we're just going to set the delay equal to 0. And I'm going to call the same logic we're going to bring over to here, var delay 750, set this to that variable. And here we set delay to 0 in the case it's the start. That way, when we do get to the start, it just instantly goes instead of waiting for that delay. But here, it will wait. Cool. Okay, I think all that's left to do is get rid of these backgrounds so that they're invisible. So now you can, click the screen as you would, and everything seems pretty good. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with that. All I think I want to worry about now is being able to leave this screen. Oh, one more thing. Okay, we definitely want, we actually, in this case, in the case of showing next story when we don't have more, we do want to return out of this, meaning we don't really have to worry about changing that delay because it's never going to get there, because we don't want this thing to keep looping. So go zoom, boom, and then this one should just fill and be done. Great. So what I would suggest we do here, when you're done watching your stories, when you're done all of them, I believe it usually just goes back to the home screen. So we can actually go window.location equals index.html. Now this won't be as clean and smooth as the app because it's just going to be like a hard refresh to a new page, but it'll still work pretty well. There you go. You're back here. No, doesn't do any exciting animation or anything. But yeah, it's pretty sweet. Okay. I noticed because we wrapped this thing in an A tag, just going back to the home page, because I do this we essentially made go here. And now we have the, the fact when you click through all this stuff, it'll bring you back. So that's nice. Quickly though, I want to make this X also do the same thing. So we can do that pretty easily. Where is that? The times right here. We're gonna do that with JavaScript just because there's multiple. So we can var close button elements equal document.query selector all, and this is .fa times. And what we want to do on these guys is I'm going to do for each again, like we did before. And we can pass in a function. This first parameter is the element that is looping through. And we can go element.add event listener. And all we have to do is that same thing, window.location equals index.html. So now I should be able to go here, although I don't know why. I think there's an error happening. Yep, there we go. Add event listener, expected to target. Oh, yes, sorry. Add event listener. We specifically want the event listener for click. So now I should be able to just click this and go back. Again, no fancy animation because of the way we've built it so far, but it's nice to be able to move around. And of course, we can make this clickable to go to everything and whatnot. Okay, so yeah, I think we're good. Because we made this a link now, there's a little bit of styling we would have to do to that. I think we can do that pretty quickly. Story, and let's see what we did that on the index. Where did we add that link? So it's a class story list item. So we'll look for that, and I can just set its color to the black that we've been using because links automatically are purple, and we can turn off its text decoration to none. That should just set it back to normal. There we go, and we're good. Okay, so that's where I'm going to leave it on this project. But I do want to let you know that I have put up this code on publicly on my GitHub. GitHub name is tsave-codes. And from here, even without knowing how to use Git or whatever, you could actually find this page. You can click download zip. And if you were to download that and open it, you're going to see that it has exactly the same thing that I've been working on. The only thing is it currently at this exact moment doesn't have the newest stuff that I've done, but I can very quickly do that. I'm just committing this code to the repo. Story animations, we'll call it. Git push. And now, literally starting now, if you go to this, it is now up to date. You can see that I should have a new commit now of these recent changes. Okay, so yeah, you can go here, github.com/tsavecodes, and then from here, you should be able to find by clicking on my repositories, this one right here, YA Coding Camp Instagram. And you can download it and you can play with it and add more stuff and have a ball. All right, it's been really fun making this project with all of you. Hopefully, most of it made sense. I know we did some things that were definitely built off of very basic things that we learned in the past, and I think we did a lot of new things like Flexbox and some deeper dives into some JavaScript stuff and animations. So yeah, let me know what you think. Feel free to message me on any format that you wish, whether you found this on Instagram or Facebook or email or through GitHub or YouTube even. You might have found it on YouTube. Okay, thanks so much, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day.